I'm Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is Brien Lundin, who's editor of the Gold newsletter. Brien, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
All right, so we're here at VRIC 2020. First of all, I wanted to ask you, what are you expecting to see in the junior mining space this year? How do you think 2020 is going to be different to 2019?
I think it's, I don't know how it's going to be different because 2019 actually for about half the year, about late May through August, was very good for the juniors. It's very good for the metals as well. I think it's going to be a good year for the juniors. I think we're in the midst of a New Year rally in the metals, so I think the juniors are going to carry along with that. So it remains to be seen whether this year we're going to have an earlier rally in the metals and by extension the juniors that lasts more than a month or two and maybe goes like it traditionally does into May, June, or whether we're going to fall back and then maybe start rising again later in the year. So I don't know how that's going to play out. In general, I think we're in a really bullish setup for the precious metals, for gold and silver right now. I think we have probably a couple of months left to that rally at least. And I think the juniors are really going to benefit from that. I think it's going to be a great year for them, frankly, and I think the current levels right now, they haven't really begun to move or respond to the recent rise in the metals prices. So I think it's a real window of opportunity here.
Right, and early 2020, but we've seen geopolitical tensions rise. We've seen the U.S. trade deal in the works, but it's also election year in the U.S. How do you think that's going to impact gold and other precious metals?
What we've already seen this year has been a geopolitical issue, like you say, with Iran. We've seen the China trade deal signed. The geopolitical issue, that erupted, and gold had already gained about 4% through the last portion of December and the first day of January. Then that came up, gold spiked, and I warned all of our readers that that ran the risk of temporarily derailing the gold rally because we'd have the spike, things would calm down, the price would come back down. And it did that, but it didn't give up all the gains it had gotten. So that was one really good sign for me about the gold market. And then we had the China trade deal. That was a negative, a bearish factor for gold for almost 2 years, in that any progress in the talks with China was deemed to be bearish. Well, they signed the deal. I would have thought gold would have lost $50 to $100 from the way it behaved over the previous 2 years, but it gained $10 on the day. And so that's another bullish sign, another sign to me that we're in really in a bull market because investors are finding excuses to buy the metal rather than reasons to sell. They're interpreting new information in a bullish manner. So that's really a strong hallmark of a bull market environment. So I think that's good for gold. I think that's good for the short term. Longer term, I really don't think the U.S. election is going to affect gold that much unless it looks like the Democratic side of the ticket starts to gain ground, especially if more of the leftward candidates like Bernie Sanders wins the nomination. I think that would be good for gold and we'd benefit from that, but I don't really see that happening.
Right, and what about the U.S. dollar? What do you expect to see for the U.S. dollar this year?
The U.S. dollar has started a bit of a downtrend, and I think that's going to last a while. It's not enough yet that we can kind of look forward and say it's going to last all year, but it will probably extend that downtrend for the next couple of months. One of the things we've seen is that the Federal Reserve has essentially returned to quantitative easing, and at a level that really meets or exceeds the level of QE1 back in 2009. So I think that's really a negative influence on the dollar right now.
All right, and considering all these factors, how high do you think gold prices can go in 2020?
Well, I hate to make those kinds of predictions because you can always be called on them, but I think my target is getting into 1650 to 1700 this year. I think we could do better, but I think that's a fairly safe target for me.
All right, and for investors that are new to the junior mining space, what would be one lesson that you learned quickly when you started investing in this space?
Well, one of the lessons we always learn quickly is don't invest in the losers, but it's hard to take that lesson. and do anything with it. I think one of the important lessons that people are going to have to learn in this bull market that we see coming up is when to take profits. It's when the market's rising, when the rising tide is lifting all boats, it's not hard to have a winner in this market, and you feel like a genius on the buying side of the equation. It's much harder to sell, to fight your emotions and take your money off the table. And what they have to learn how to do is always find a reason to take some money out of the market, and even take some money completely out of the market, not just go to cash, but put it in illiquid investments so you're not tempted to throw it right back in. There have been a few peaks in the market where people should have made or did make a lot of money on paper, but they came away with very little in the end.
Right.
It's such a volatile area.
And would you be able to share your best investment of 2019?
Yeah, we had some good ones in Gold Newsletter this year. We had, we were very early for Great Bear. That was a couple of years ago, we recommended that. So we were up about 25, 26 times on that investment. We were up 4 or 5 times on New Pacific. We were also up 4 or 5 times on Aftermath Silver. We got our readers in very early on that one. So that's worked out very well. And it's hard having a record like that. Now the pressure's on us to do it again in 2020.
Right, and that's my last question for you today. What companies do you like right now?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I like Mill Rock Resources. They're going to be drilling in March on a great project, and they've got a lot of money of a joint venture partner to do that, so they're going to be hitting that very hard. I like Scotty Resources. I've just been talking to that company. I think there's some time on that, but they do have money. They will be going back to drill this season, but that's in the Golden Triangle, so we have some time on that one. But I do like their prospects. I like Revival Gold. They're going to come out with a new resource estimate very soon, and I'm hopeful for that. I think that's going to be good for the stock. So I guess those 3 would do.
All right, Brien, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Once again, I'm Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is Brien Lundin, editor of the Gold Newsletter.